Hello to you folks out there watching on YouTube. This is Blowing Smoke with Twisted Rico. I'm your host, Steve Riccardo. If you want to hear this entire show with intros, outros, and music, please go to Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, etc. Please welcome to the show, Sky Daddy. Nice to meet you, Sky.
Hi, it's nice to meet you too. How are you?
Good. So you're like on a national tour right now. I know we were supposed to talk a few days ago, and I wrote down Chicago and Minneapolis. So I'm thinking you just played those cities.
Yep. We just got done with those. In Milwaukee. We've done three so far. And we're in Michigan tomorrow.
The Blind Pig. I did have that
Yeah.
written down here. That's like a legendary club in Ann Arbor, right near Detroit.
Yeah.
Have you played there before?
No, never. I'm excited though.
That's a good. You'll like it there.
Yeah.
Before we talk about the tour, more about the tour and new music and Traumacore, etc. Do you remember when you first started listening to music and who some of your early influences were?
Um, so I have like a wide variety of music that I listened to when I was younger. My mom was my biggest like the person that got me into music. So like I ended up like listening to we she cleans houses, so I cleaned houses with her when I was little,
Mhm.
and she always put her iPod on like the dock, and whatever she was listening to we were listening to. So it differed. Like sometimes it was Breaking Benjamin or 3 Days Grace. um and then it went so like completely the opposite other way, and then it was like Jason Mraz, or like sometime it was country where we were listening to Reba McEntire, to McGraw. It was, and we were all into theater too, so we were like listening to Wicked and musicals and stuff. So it was all over the place. We're definitely the type of people where it was like, if it's good we'll listen to it. So I was probably, my very first concert that she took me to was a Nickelback concert.
Oh,
And yeah. And Breaking Benjamin and 3 Days Grace opened up for Nickelback.
wow.
And that was how we first got into them. We didn't even know about them at the time. And we were like, oh my God, like we're in love with these people now. So I was around, I want to say, I think 8 years old or so, when I first started really kind of absorbing it. And
That's
then
cool.
when I was, yeah, then when I was like four or so, that was when I was in like theater and stuff. So musical theater has always been a part of my life since I was really young, because my mom's always acted and stuff like that. So it's, yeah, it's
Did
been
you
around all my life.
did you want to be an actress?
I think that that was my main, like that was something that I was really drawn to, especially because like I said, since I was four, I've been in like random plays here and there. And then like when I got to be like around 12, I started taking it like even seriously, like even more seriously. So like I've been in like around 40 plays and productions.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like
Cool.
it was something that we did like all the time. Like we did it like every summer, and even in between that. And then I went to college for my bachelor in fine arts because I wanted to be like be on Broadway. Um, and I think that was the main goal at first. And it was because I knew that I liked music, and I loved like, my parents had me singing like country music and stuff like that. And I performed at like local talent shows and around like for charities and things like that. And it was such a like a small scale that I didn't have any grasp on what it was to be an artist at the time. So I was like, oh, like you're supposed to go to college and get a degree, and then you can go off and like be an actor, and that's like the whole thing. But then that things sometimes don't pan out that way. But I definitely, in the future, when I kind of tackle the music industry, I will definitely be taking a
Revisit.
turn back into acting, because I love it so much, and I honestly I miss it so much too.
Now, you're not originally from Texas. You're from the East Coast, right?
Yeah, I'm from Virginia. I'm from the Eastern Shore of Virginia.
So these early days we're talking about were on the East Coast.
Yes, in
Do
this like
you
really tiny town in the middle of nowhere.
was getting back to the music that you listened to when you were young, did anything really grab you, or was it those emo, punk bands that you mentioned, or was there?
Yeah, I think honestly, Breaking Benjamin really was like that was like my number one. Like I like being a kid, like I could not stop listening to like their early stuff, like Diary of Jane and Breath. Like I was so obsessed with them. And even after I kind of went through my like punk rock phase, I had a friend that got me really into rap and was like, oh, like Eminem and early MGK, like Black Flag Nation when I was in high school. That grabbed me, and I was like, oh, that's really, really cool. I didn't even know that like there were artists that made like this mental health type music. And NF was a really huge one as well. Because he like raps about his trauma as well. So yeah, there was a couple that definitely caught my mind or caught my attention that stuck with me for a while.
No, so I'm gathering that you didn't really start becoming a music performer until later. I mean, was this before or after college? And where
This
did you
was
go to college? Go to college?
it's I went to college at the American Musical and Dramatic Arts Academy in New York City.
Oh,
Yeah, it's called
good one.
AMDA. It was fun. It was a lot of fun. I went for my bachelor in fine arts, so it was vocal production and speech where I like learned how to like speak properly. I actually have kind of a thick accent that I dropped because when I went to New York, it was like, okay, well, if you want to be on Broadway, you're gonna have to like do standard American dialect, is what it's called. And then I took obviously acting classes and dance classes and stuff. It was kind of like this Broadway boot camp, honestly.
Yeah.
um and it was great and I loved it. I ended up not being able to finish it. I think I only went for about, I think, 2 years. But yeah, and then what was the other question?
I'm trying to get the timeline on this. So you were still in Virginia and then
Oh,
you went to college, or did you move to Texas and then go to college?
so Texas came way later. Texas
Way
came
later.
after I had already kind of made it as an artist. Like I had already established a fan base and I had kind of like investors that knew who I was and that became kind of friends of mine that moved me to Texas. When we were in So it went from I was in Virginia and then I went to college in New York when I was around like 18 or so. And then when I left college, my friend came and got me and brought me to New Jersey, which is where she lived. And I lived there for a while, just like working. I worked as a janitor for a while at Live Nation with
Wow.
her and on like maintenance and stuff. Yeah. And it was like I was going through like a difficult time. So I was struggling with like, you know, being just like kind of like being a person and like functioning as an adult. And like I had recently gotten diagnosed with PTSD, anxiety, and depression, and I was trying so hard to like recover from certain traumatic experiences that I went through. And eventually whilst in the middle of all that, we went to like when we were in New Jersey, that's when COVID hit, and then we lost our
Hmm.
jobs. So we had like no money and nowhere to go. So we ended up buying this camper and living in this like small plot of land that was like a campground in New Jersey, in Freehold, New Jersey. And we lived in that camper for I think I want to say about 2 years. And that's where everything was built because we even were talking about it today where we were like, how did we even survive the camper? Because it was cold and it was just not great living conditions. But it was there where we were kind of like, okay, well, if we're going to do anything to try to kind of like cope with any of the things that not only I have gone through, but like she has gone through as well. It's like my friend and she's my partner. I'm just saying she's my girlfriend.
I was wondering who
um,
the we was. I was going to
yeah,
ask you that.
yeah. She became such a huge part of it. She was like, I know you've gone through all this trauma, and she took me away from it and tried to help me kind of cope with it. And that's where she introduced me to NF, MGK, and all of these male artists that made this mental health based music, and was like, I know you've never heard of these people, but like, what if you became like a female version of that? And
Wow.
that's where I was like, that's crazy, that you're insane, I can't do that. And a couple of moments happened where it was like even like before COVID hit, we were working, and I started experiencing triggers and flashbacks and dealing with kind of ignorant people that made stupid kind of jokes that were really inappropriate and fucked up. And it made me realize how much there's people in the world that have to deal with certain traumas that they've gone through, and they have to just kind of like cope with it the best way they know how. And I had no way of doing it. So that was kind of when my first song Triggered became a thing, because like they were made like there were these guys that were making sexual assault jokes, honestly, is what happened. And it was horrible and it was disgusting and I didn't know what to do. So I almost hit one of them with a brick, because we were laying down bricks at the time. I know this is really stupid, but like like I was so mad. Like they were straight up making jokes about like ignoring consent and stuff like that, and it was just so
Yeah.
triggering to me, and I didn't know what to do about it. So we were like, I had a brick in my hand and I threatened one with it, and Megan was like, I got you this job, you need to go cool down, like you're gonna get fired. And that was when my first song, it was like, I shouldn't take things so serious, I don't think they mean any harm, but it would sicken you too if it happened to you and you had to relive every part. Like those words just kind of came to me when I was like walking it off, and it just kept coming. And like, here come the flashbacks and the panic attacks, how long does that shit last, like all of those lyrics just kind of came flooding to me. And it didn't stop. Like everything that I'd ever gone through, just people are always like, how do you write music? And it's just like it's like my subconscious just being like, this is how you feel, this is the shit that you're going through. And somehow it just kind of comes out like slightly poetically, I guess. um and then that's what, like literally after that happened and I started writing, was when COVID hit. And then we were kind of like, okay, well, like what if we tried to do, we have nothing else. And weirdly, COVID hitting was like kind of like, this sounds weird to say because I know it was horrible, but like kind of a blessing for us, because everyone was inside. No one had anything to do but listen to music, but be on TikTok,
Mm.
but watch content. And that was when I kind of blew up. I posted Triggered. I found my fan base that consisted of so many people that had gone through trauma and had PTSD. And I also had a like a side thing. I had two TikTok pages that blew up. One was the Daddy channel, which was like LGBT remixes.
Mhm.
And then I had Sky Dxddy Music, which was the one that we kind of like were like, oh shit, this is something that like means something like so much to people. And I kept going on both of them, and then eventually I kind of stopped doing the Daddy channel because like I got so bullied with that. It just became really toxic. So I hyper focused on, learn like trying to teach people about dealing with trauma. And then that's when Traumacore kind of became like, it was like, oh shit, every single thing that I'm making is very based within trauma. So there was already this thing on Reddit where people made edits in like pictures and stuff. It was usually young kids that have gone through trauma, where they put like Hello Kitty things on like kind of like creepy backgrounds and stuff. And that was what Traumacore was. And it was never really brought to like the forefront of like the music world yet. So that was when it was like, okay, let's call this Traumacore and let's keep going and see where it takes us. And we networked and we reached out to people, and it just kind of went from there. And fast forward maybe 4 years later is when Strange Music, It Goes Up Entertainment, In Grooves kind of reached out to us, and we signed a distribution deal with them recently. And people, started being like, oh, like people have started like kind of being like, oh, you're like the CEO of Traumacore, like you, yeah, like right now we're trying to create, well, we have created Traumacore Records. And we're just seeing where it takes us, and just, yeah, it's just a journey at this point.
You're
We
like the
built the
easiest,
foundation.
you're the easiest person I've ever interviewed. You've answered
Right.
every question I was going to ask for the next five
I'm
minutes.
sorry. I know I talk a lot. I'm so sorry.
Well, so it seems to me, putting the timing together, that a lot has been accomplished in the last 4 years, basically, is
Yeah,
what we're talking about.
for
Um,
sure.
Let me go back for a second here, because I had heard in an interview. Okay, so you didn't really start writing till you were finished those 2 years in New York. You were done with school, so you didn't start when you were a teenager. You started in
Mm-mm.
your early 20s.
Yeah, yeah. Like, cause I'm 20, I just turned 27. So I was probably around, yeah, like 21, 22 ish when I first started writing. And then the process of learning everything took like 2 years. So I like to be like, I kind of got started technically like 3 years ago, because like the learning curve and like even figuring out how to get your songs on the iTunes and Spotify, like when you
Yeah.
don't know about that world and you don't exist within that world yet, you have to like Google how to be an artist and stuff like that. So it was a good 2 years of learning how to do what we needed to do, and like then we started to utilize it after those couple of years. So
When
I was in my early 20s.
when did you actually play in front of people for the first time?
So there was this artist that we found. His name was NK47. We ended up doing a song together. And when you're first getting started as a musician, especially as a really green one, as a really fresh one, you have to pay to play.
Mm,
So I it was we had to pay $500 for me to open up for NK. And
wow.
yeah, it was a it was like a decent amount of people. I can't remember how many people it was, but it was not
Where was
many.
this? Where did
It
that
was
happen?
it was at the HMAC in Pennsylvania, I think. Um, I want to say
Oh,
is where it was. I think it's called it.
Philly? Philadelphia?
Oh, maybe it was Philly. Do you know where the HMAC? Like you've heard of the HMAC?
No.
It's like I think it. Because I what's weird? Oh, it's in Harrisburg. What's
Harrisburg.
weird
Wow.
is yeah, it's in Pennsylvania. It was in
Okay.
Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and yeah, so that was the first time I did that. That was years and years ago, which is crazy because we're actually hitting that exact venue on this tour.
That's
Um,
cool.
yeah, so that's gonna be insane.
Did you have some kind of a process or a ritual to help you deal with nerves or performance anxiety? Because you obviously weren't a performer. You did some acting, you said, but it's a little different when you're going up there and singing.
Yeah, it was, especially because I go up there and I rap, so I feel like there's this level of judgment that comes off very instantly. Because it's like I'm a tiny little white girl that is trying to be a rapper. It's like it's kind of a funny thing. So there, I think the most thing that I did was just like I just tried to be so overly prepared. Um, Especially back
Mm,
then, I just like made sure I knew all of my material. I I focused more so on things that didn't necessarily matter at the time. Like I feel like I cared so much about like what I looked like and what my outfits were and like all of that stuff. And now like I perform in like giant shirts and baggy pants because like I want to be comfortable on stage. Like one show I wore Crocs. I don't really care about what I wear anymore because my music is like it speaks for
it's
itself.
cool.
Yeah, and I love that. But like I think in the beginning I was so focused on like kind of the wrong things that it got me even more in my head. And now I my pre-show ritual is like whatever show I'm hyper fixating on at the moment, like I watch episodes of that and eat like honestly I eat it like a Caesar salad. It's like my thing. And then I do my warm-ups and
You
then I
have a
go on.
ritual. You do have a
I do
ritual.
have a ritual. I do. And last year on last tour, it was Friends that I watched nonstop, and now it's Big Bang Theory. So it's a new show every tour.
Big Bang is a good one because
Oh, I
it's
know.
just you just feel like it's gets your attention. It's funny,
It does. It does. It's so good. It's so good. And we're getting into Young Sheldon too. It's so good.
Do you freestyle at all, or do you have like your lyrics all? Do you have to have notes? I mean, how I never really asked someone this question. I was curious.
So I'm very much just like a storyteller and a songwriter. Like I do have
Hmm.
to have things pre-prepared. I think I have really like pretty bad nerves, and like you have to be so confident in yourself to freestyle. And I think that's something I never have been able to accomplish yet. I definitely have like had the thought of like, oh, I should probably learn how to do that should someone ask me to do that in the future. Sometimes there are moments where they're like freestyle and I like pretend that I'm freestyling something that I have pre-prepared in my head. But most of my stuff it needs to be like written down. It needs to be created first for me to know, because it's like I think that also comes with me being an actor and like being in
Yeah.
theater. It was already a pre-prepared script like at all times. So going completely off dome, like that's just that that baffles me, if
I
I'm
know
being
there's a
honest.
difference between rapping and freestyling. So,
Oh, for
um,
sure.
like you mentioned Traumacore, and
Mhm.
you kind of explained this, but maybe you can tell us some more. Did you come up with the tag, or did people just start calling it Traumacore? You mentioned your partner was helping you. Is she like your manager or work together
Yeah,
with you?
yeah, Megan definitely became my manager. We had a couple of experiences with managers and people in the past that did not really have our best interest at heart.
Hmm.
So we learned later down the line where we're like, okay, let's just have Megan be
Keep it
like
in
the
the family,
designated.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know what's up, you know why this is so important to me. You're not gonna screw me over, all of this stuff. Um, I think that a couple of people started using the term when they talked about my music, and they made, I think they were like calling me like the queen of Traumacore or something, and it stuck, and I was like, oh, that's really cool. And I was like, oh, what is that technically? And I googled it, and if you google it, it really originated like within Reddit and within like the internet of like art, like actual
Hmm.
visual art. But there wasn't really artists. Like there was emo music and there was like dark and alternative rap, but no one ever labeled it Traumacore. And I feel like my music dug so deep and it got so psychologically into like people's minds and why they are the way that they are and what trauma does to a person, that it just fits so perfectly.
It's a good
uh
tag. It's a really good tag.
it is,
It's
right?
caught on too by the
It
numbers. We'll talk about that in a minute, but you have some serious numbers going on.
thank you.
You've been releasing singles pretty much one after another now. Was
Mhm.
this your plan all along and then work your way up to the full length album, which I think you're going to do this year, right?
Yeah, so the album, it keeps kind of getting put off, mostly just because like we've been focusing on trying to balance like tour and creation, and I feel like we haven't quite gotten the hang of that yet. I feel like what a lot of people fail to realize is that like even though I've like have been doing this for a while, we are fairly new and we don't really have systems in place yet, which we're trying to learn. And we, with It Goes Up Entertainment and with In Grooves and Strange Music, they do a better job at keeping me on schedule because they're like, hey, you need to like kind of get something going on, um, which is great. But I think that we had plans for an album, but I didn't want to rush it. I think that a lot of the times albums get so rushed, and I want it to be, if technically my first album was Into the Dark, which is what I released like while I was literally in my camper. But it would kind of be slightly something of a debut album because like people know who I am now, they're aware of what I'm doing,
Mhm.
that kind of thing. um I think the plan was just, I have like really bad ADHD, if I'm being honest. So I think the random releases was always kind of what we like did. And then when like our team kind of got involved, they were like, okay, you kind of need to schedule this a little bit better. um yeah, so yeah,
You,
that was, yeah, I never really knew what the plan was, if I'm being honest. I like the music and I like releasing it, and when it's ready, it's ready. And we've realized here lately that I need to kind of get more it like, oh, like every month or every 3 weeks I release a song. So that'll be, it'll make it easier for my fans to
yeah.
come back and be like, oh, like we're getting something on a time schedule, like our favorite show or something like that. But I'm still working on it, if I'm being honest.
You already you touched on. I want to talk about your songwriting, your lyrics for a minute here. You touched on this a little bit, and I imagine I wrote. I imagine you strictly write out of emotion, which I'm sure you do. Do you ever have to force yourself to write songs? Are they already in you and coming out because of your emotion about what you're writing?
For the most part, yes. I think there are a couple times where I've collaborated with some people where I have to get myself in a headspace. Like I've done a couple of collaborations with a few people where I'm already kind of there, but it may be something where it's like it's been kind of slightly buried, I guess. Like it's, since this is Traumacore, I usually take on my personal experience. So there's this one song I'm working on right now that I think I'm going to be calling Heavy. That I want someone to collaborate on with me. I'm still not sure who, I've been kind of weighing like pros and cons of like who I should have it on there with me. But that was one where I kind of was like, okay, let's kind of go back into my past and see how this makes me feel and see what we can come from this. So to answer the question, sometimes, but most of the time it's kind of fairly on the surface.
It's funny that you have a song called Heavy because
Yeah,
it's all heavy to me.
it
Everything
is.
I've listened to is
It
really
is.
heavy.
It's
S
super heavy.
Some of these songs I wanted to bring up, Why Me? The first time I heard it and watched the video, it really shook me up. So I can only imagine
Yeah.
what you were feeling.
That was a hard one. That was a very hard one. I've dealt with religious trauma my whole life, obviously, like being gay and going through assaults and things like that. You really do struggle with like, I don't know, to this day I struggle with my relationship with God and religion and stuff. And I think when we made the decision to do it in a church, and like actually film the video in a church,
That was
it was
wild.
intense. It was a very intense experience. It really was. It was cathartic and it felt good. I'd be lying if there weren't moments where I was like kind of breaking down because it was just such an intense
Did,
thing
did,
that I was
did,
doing.
did you have to make special arrangements to get into that church?
It was an abandoned church that we ended up
Oh,
finding like random. I think it was like a historical church that people could randomly visit. Like if you on like the side of it, it was like it was like something kind of like a not like a monument, but like it was just something that no one went to it anymore. It was just something where it was like a tourist site, if you will.
it
But it
was
was so
intact. It was still
it,
intact, though. It
it
looked
was
like
it was so weird, honestly, because we went there and we thought that people still went there, but like when you went in, like you could open the doors and like things were it wasn't it wasn't like super beat up and super like abandoned to the point where it wasn't like able to be like walked inside, but you could tell like I think like a groundskeeper came and like touched things up and things like that.
wow.
I want to say it was one of those like older churches, like I don't know if it's like a colonial type thing, but it was like a historical church
Was
that people could just go. It was like off the beaten path kind of thing.
was
So
this
no
in
one really went
Texas?
there.
Texas?
Yes, yes, it was. It was. I can't remember where. It was like I think 2 or 3 hours away from us. We just searched churches and we were like, okay, let's see if they'll let us film there. And then we realized there was no one there. So we were like, let's come back tomorrow and, and shoot a video.
For you folks out there listening to this, you got to check this video out. It shook me like you would not believe when I watched it. Triggered,
Oof.
another one. That was kind of the beginning almost of your whole
Yeah.
deal, right?
Yeah, that was definitely the beginning where I realized like I kind of had a knack for putting these emotions into words. I think for the longest time I didn't really want to even talk about certain things that I went through, and or I pushed them so deeply down and pretended that they weren't even there. And then I got to a point where I was like, okay, there's obviously some repressed things going on where I'm like, and I'm not healing and I'm not doing good and I'm not a successful human being. Like I was just not in a good place at all, like mentally,
Hmm.
financially, career wise. I was just floating basically. And then that was when Megan was like, she honestly NF the rapper NF really impacted my life in a huge way because she let me listen to his song Mansion, and it was kind of like that click of like, oh shit, like if he can do that, like why
Yeah.
there's not a girl version of this yet. And that's a really exciting thing to think about because girls do need that. And then it became like so much deeper than just me speaking for women. I started speaking in kind of a generalized way where like if you listen to Triggered, it's not just focused on women going through trauma. It can be like I've had veterans reach out to me and people who have been in car accidents and school shootings. Like it's such a wide, I've generalized in a way where it touched people where they could interpret it the way that they needed to interpret it to use it as a therapy and use it as a coping mechanism. But yeah, Triggered was the one.
It's not like a pattern, but it kind of is because Battlefield Really,
Yeah,
really good. Also really, really angry.
yeah,
And plus, I found a live version online that's great. How do you feel when you hear the entire audience? Sounds like all women, because I didn't see the
yeah.
audience, but it sounded like all women singing along to every lyric.
Amazing. Oh God, it's amazing. It's the most exciting thing ever. Um, I think obviously Battlefield was written after the Roe versus Wade overturn, where I had none, like no one knew what to do. We were just like, okay, we just have to deal with this. I live in Texas, so it's very red and it's very like this is what's going on, and you hear like horror stories of women have to go into like fucking out of state and almost dying because they can't get health care. And I felt so much anger and so much pain and frustration. And there wasn't really much I could do about it. And so like the only thing I knew what like that I could do was just to write about it. And that there, yeah. So that just became that, yeah, it just became this song that resonated with obviously me and so many other people, and even performing them in states where abortion is illegal, and it's very like it's kind of like almost taboo to even talk about it, but like you can feel the frustration and the anger of these women that are like this is bullshit, and I think that's why they scream it so loudly and need that kind of release. So it's a bittersweet feeling for sure.
This is a little off topic, but you live in Austin and you mentioned Texas, the red state.
Yeah,
Do you feel that you're in a safe place when you're in Austin compared to the rest of the state? I mean,
for
maybe the
sure.
cities all kind of seem to be more liberal in Texas, but Austin more so, I think.
Yeah, that's why we kind of went to Austin. Like I went from Virginia to New York to New Jersey, back to Virginia, like in Shenandoah Valley, and then we went to Austin, and we looked up like LGBT friendly places to live because we had already gone through a lot of homophobia and a lot of hate and stuff, and we didn't want to deal with that anymore. We were tired of like the I come from a pretty country background. Like Virginia's like pretty rednecky like
Hmm.
vibe. And they say what they want to say when they want to say it, and it's meh. um so when I looked up like places that were safe for LGBT people, it was Austin was one of the top ones on the list. And I live in a pretty diverse neighborhood where like if you like as soon as you go in, it's kind of like it's like a little suburban area where it's like a whole bunch of houses that kind of like slightly look the same, and you can look in the yards and they have like rainbow flags, and all of our neighbors are of different ethnicities. Like it's not very it doesn't feel like Texas, honestly, like
A
at
lot of
all. Like
musicians live there too, so
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Austin doesn't Austin's kind of like a little like I don't want to say Los Angeles, but like it's a little it's kind of like LA. Like it's very diverse. It's very keep Austin weird is like the phrase or whatever. So there's lots of gay people and lots of people doing whatever the hell they want, and it's just I think yeah, I feel like Texans like true like tried and true red state Texans aren't too fond of us, but
Yeah,
we're
Austin's
here. So
very un-Texas for
it's
sure.
very it's super un-Texas. I think I never really realized it. It was always kind of like, how do we end up in Texas? Especially as directly after we moved there, the whole Roe versus Wade thing happened. So it was like, well, Jesus, like that just didn't work out very well. But I feel like if I wasn't in a state where it wasn't so like in my face at all times, I think that Battlefield might not even have existed. So in a way, it was kind of like a silver lining, I guess.
Did you ever have a place in Austin called Mount Bonnell?
Mount Bonnell.
Yeah, it's near Lake Travis. Lake Travis, is that the name of the big lake there?
Yeah, yeah, I know where
Anyways,
Lake
it's
Travis
these,
is.
you should look it up. It's these stairs, and the saying is that if you ask someone to walk up the stairs with you, you're telling them that you love them. It's
Oh,
called
that's so cute.
Mount Bonnell. I wrote a poem about it a long time ago when I went there one time.
Oh,
One more song. Pretty
okay.
Distraction. Um, Pretty intense song. Already had last time I looked at it over 2 million views on YouTube. Seems like a
Yeah.
lot of people, especially women, can really relate to this. Can you talk about the song and the reaction it's getting? How do you Do you think it's
Ooh,
been because of all the work you've been doing the last few years that you're getting so many views now on YouTube? And also, I was going to bring up TikTok as well, but
yeah.
YouTube, it's hard to get that many plays, and you're getting them.
Yeah, I think so. Pretty Distraction was the first music video. Well, so the first official music video. Like I, I put a lot of money into that music video. Like honestly, $30,000 went into that music video.
Wow.
I know. And it was kind of a risk that I was taking, but I was so proud of the song and how it was doing. And I felt like people needed a visual representation of what it meant to me. And I'm so proud of it. And it was the most fun experience ever because I got to work with Digital Thunderdomes, who is when I was like, like I said, I acted back in the day. So when I was around probably like 15 years old, I was in this music video where I played like a girl that got kidnapped in this band's music video they're called Il Nino, and the song's called Blood is Thicker Than Water. You could like look it up. It's like it still exists. But I worked with these people, and I did a couple of more things with them. I was on like this show called Monsters and Mysteries in America, where it was like on Destination Discovery Channel. It's like I did like a few things with them. And then a couple of like fast forward years later, they reach out to me and was like, "Hey, I see like you're crushing it. Like it's crazy to see this. Congratulations. If you ever want to do a music video together, we could like I'd be down to do that." So I once that happened, I was like, I would love to do that with them because they're so talented and they're very like they're very passionate about what they do.
Hmm.
So I went all in. I was like, how much would it cost to have a car that I can destroy on set and have rain and a bar set that they built from scratch. And it was just this whole production went into it. The classroom scene where I got to like stand up on a desk and break a ruler, like it's such a cool experience. Um yeah, so the I
You
think
got your money's
TikTok.
worth,
I
basically.
did.
Yeah, you got your
I think
money's
I did. I definitely did. Even if it was just like visually, like I was pleased with the results. I'm not even sure if I think I've recouped. I'm not even sure if I have yet, but it doesn't matter because I like the art process anyway. Um I think TikTok and Instagram and even Facebook, I'm very focused on cross pollination where I post everywhere and I give myself my best chance by posting everywhere and creating small fan bases or potentially big fan bases on each platform. And it takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of my personal life away from me, but it pays off because then you're like you can put stream Spotify or stream Sky Dxddy on Spotify and you watch it translate and you watch them go from TikTok to YouTube and from Instagram to TikTok and from TikTok to Facebook and they just kind of start going all over the place and traveling kind of with you. And then you can get to the point where you're like, oh, by the way, I'm going to be performing this live. I know you want to sing this with me. Like, and then that's when you can sell hard tickets, which is the hardest thing to do as an artist. um so yeah, it's been amazing getting to see the reaction for
You're
Pretty
doing
Distraction.
great with social media.
Thank
Fantastic
you.
job.
Thank you.
I just want to ask you a couple more things before I let you go rest because I know you're on tour.
Yeah.
I was curious, what are you listening to these days? Do you have certain artists that you listen to, or songs that you like? Or is it like, are you so engulfed in the day-to-day activity that you don't have time for that?
Honestly, this like the last one, I wish I could say that I'm absorbing other people's music, and I think I try to. Like when I think I kind of watch trends on TikTok and things like that. So there are certain artists that kind of catch my eye. Um, I feel like most of the time I usually watch and listen to people that I end up trying to collaborate with or do collaborate with. So I listen to a lot of Jelly Roll. That's a dream collab for me, but like his music is just amazing. Like my God. Especially because in the future I'm kind of tempted to go back to my roots and take on country and see how country would feel about Traumacore kind of entering the picture, which is gonna
That'll
be
be
a fun.
fun.
Right? They'll love that. They'll get a kick out of that. Yeah, and I feel like it's I think I try to find new artists. Like there's this guy what's his name? Oh, he's so huge right now, but there's Benson Boone who sings that song Beautiful Things. That's an
Hmm.
amazing song. I'm planning on working with this guy Jack Harris who has this song about medications and how it can be like kind of bad for you if you how big pharma really kind of just tries to numb you and stuff. That's a really good song. It's called Careful What You Wish For. Um, Citizen Soldier, I'm actually going on tour with them in July. So I've been listening to a lot of them. I feel
Nice.
yeah. So like I mostly just kind of like when they exist within my workspace, I get to listen to them. But any other time I'm like hyper focused on my own music, you know?
How do you
But
feel about the fact that like Taylor and Olivia Rodrigo, Beyonce, it's like women have taken over the music industry basically. Do you have any
I
thoughts on
love
that?
it. I love it. And I hope that I think that's a huge reason why I want to get into country because it's the opposite for country. If you go and you listen to a country radio station, you will like odds are you're not going to hear a female country artist except for like a handful of times. And I think that women are really good at taking over pop and even alternative and all that kind of stuff where they're allowed to exist, but then I feel like there's such a deep rooted almost misogyny when it comes to country that I really just want to kick in the ass because that's not cool and that's not fair because we deserve to exist wherever we want to exist. But I love it. I love that women are trying to take up space and have their voices heard and talk about topics that are important even if people don't want to talk about them. Like it's exciting. It's an exciting time to be an artist for sure.
I think Dolly Parton would love you actually.
Oh,
Uh,
I'd love to
um,
meet Dolly.
so I was looking at your tour schedule. I'm up here in the Northeast. I was looking at that Boston show. So maybe I think it was the Brighton Music Hall, but maybe I'm gonna try and get out there and check out your act because I
Yeah,
am really blown away by what you're doing.
thank you. That'd be amazing. I'll put Steve Riccardo on the list.
Oh, now I have to go. Um, Sky, thanks a lot. I appreciate your
Yeah,
time.
absolutely. Thank you for having me.
All
This
right,
is great.
have a great tour.
You too. All right. You have a great day.
Yeah,
Bye
thanks.
bye.